The taxi slowed to a stop at the edge of Maple Street, its tires crunching over dry autumn leaves. The world outside the window was painted in amber and gold, the kind of light that could almost fool you into believing everything was still the same. Bakit basante? He had been gone for only 4 weeks, a short trip, really, a long-delayed vacation that my son insisted I take. You deserve it, ma'am, he said, his voice calm and certain. Go see something new, clear your mind. Mary and I will take care of the house. And so I went. 4 weeks of traveling through national parks, red canyons, and mountains brushed with snow. I watched the sun sink behind landscapes so vast they made my heart ache. He thought the trip would heal me after Alice's death. He thought distance would help me breathe again. But as the taxi pulled up to the house that Alex and I had rebuilt with our own hands 25 years ago, something inside me began to tremble. My right leg throbbed, a dull, sharp pulse that hadn't left me since the accident 3 weeks earlier. A car had swerved on a narrow road in Utah, and I had ended up with a fractured femur and a bruised heart. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. Lucky, the word felt cruel now, as I stared at the place that once defined my life. The driver, a young man with kind eyes, looked back through the mirror. Ma'am, are you sure this is the address you want me to help with your luggage? Yes, I said, my throat tightening. Please. Just the suitcase, ella manage the rest. He lifted the bag gently from the trunk, following me to the walkway. The garden looked tired. The roses that Alex had planted along the stone path were overgrown, thorns twisting in wild defiance. The paint on the porch railing was chipped. For a moment, I convinced myself that neglect was all it was, that everything else inside would still be the same. Then the front door opened. Mary stood there. My daughter-in-law. The woman I had welcomed into this house 10 years ago as if she were my own daughter. Her blonde hair, always immaculate, was pinned up in a loose knot. The diamond earrings glittered in the fading light. But her eyes, they were distant, cold, practiced. Mom, she said softly, her lips curving into something that wasn't quite a smile. You're back sooner than we expected. I told you he'd come home today, I said, shifting on my cane. Is Richard inside? A flicker crossed her face, guilt, or irritation, I couldn't tell. Is not here right now. He had to fly to Chicago for work. But we need to talk. Something inside me sank. Those 4 words, we need to talk, carried a chill I recognized too well from my years in the banking world. They were never the beginning of anything good. Mary stepped aside with a measured gesture. Come in, please. He rolled my suitcase past her, the wheels clicking against the wooden floor. The air smelled different, new candles, foreign perfume, something too sweet layered over something rotten. He looked around, disoriented. The photographs that once lined the hallway, Alex in his fishing hat, Richard as a toddler covered in paint, the framed wedding picture, were gone. In their place hung abstract art in gold frames. Mary, I whispered. Where are our family photos? She clasped her hands, her voice almost rehearsed. I put them away for safekeeping. We've done some redecorating while you were gone. The house feels more open now. He turned slowly toward her. Open. She took a deep breath. Ma'am, everything has changed since you left. I've been meaning to tell you this in person because I care about you, and I didn't want you to hear it from anyone else. My heart began to pound. Her eyes were shining now, not with tears, but with the gloss of performance. My parents, they had some financial problems. A terrible situation. They lost their home. The creditors were after them. I couldn't let them be out on the streets. He gripped my cane tighter. What are you saying, Mary? I had to make a decision, she continued, her tone shifting into something firm, managerial. This house was too big for you, especially after your accident. You need a place where you can rest, where people can take care of you. So I arranged for you to move into a very nice assisted living facility. It's temporary, of course. Meanwhile, I signed the transfer papers. The house is now under my parents' name. They stay here for a while, until things settle down. For a moment, the words didn't they make sense. They floated in the air, impossible, absurd. Then they began to sting. You transferred this house, my voice cracked. This house belongs to me, to Alex and me. You can't just. Her expression hardened. Actually, I can. You gave me power of attorney before you left. Remember you signed the documents at the notary office. He told you it was just for travel insurance and hospital paperwork in case something happened. It covered the house too. The cane slipped slightly from my hand. The floor seemed to tilt. I didn't they agree to that. Y never. Binker, movement caught my eye. Two people stepped out from the living room, a tall man with silver hair and a woman in pearls and a cream-colored dress. Mary's parents. They're Sterlings. He had met them twice before. Both times, they looked at me the way people look at museum antiques, polite, detached, faintly superior. MRS, the man said, his voice smooth like glass. We're so sorry for the confusion. Mary explained everything. We take good care of this property, I assure you. This property, I repeated softly. The phrase sliced through me like a blade. The woman smiled, a thin, elegant smile. Your personal belongings are packed in boxes in the garage. We can arrange to have them shipped wherever you they like. Florida, perhaps. Florida, I echoed, almost laughing. You think I'm just going to walk away from my life, from my husband's memory, from everything eBay built? Mary stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Ma'am, please don't make this harder. The house will be in better hands this way. You be more comfortable where you're going. They have gardens, nurseries, even art classes. You love it. The driver, still standing awkwardly on the porch, sensed the tension. Ooh, ma'am, should I bring your bag inside? No, I said, my voice trembling but sharp. Leave it there. He turned to Mary. Where is my son? Is busy. It told me to tell you everything. Agrees this is for the best. Call you later tonight. He pulled out my phone and dialed Richard anyway. When he answered, his voice was weary, distant. Ma'am, listen. It's just temporary, okay? Mary's parents need a place for a few months. You can stay with Mary until your leg heals. You did sign the power of attorney, remember everything's fine. Please don't worry. Richard, I whispered, trying to steady my breath. Do you even know what Sis done? But they already ended the call. Silence filled the room, thick as fog. He looked at Mary, at the woman who used to bake apple pies in my kitchen, who once called me ma'am with genuine warmth, and I saw a stranger. Something inside me went very still. He wasn't going to beg. Not here, not in front of them. He turned to the taxi driver. Would you mind taking me to a nearby hotel? He nodded quickly, grabbed my suitcase, and followed me out. As the car pulled away, I glanced back. Through the window, Mary's mother was already directing movers, pointing to furniture, giving orders as if she had lived there for years. The porch light flickered on, washing the facade in a sterile glow. The house no longer looked like mine. It looked like an empty shell wearing my memories as decoration. At the hotel, the air smelled of lemon cleaner and old carpet. He collapsed on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Every breath hurt. I thought of Alex, his laugh, his stubborn optimism, the way they squeezed my hand whenever life grew too heavy. I failed, Alex, I whispered into the quiet. I trusted the wrong people. But somewhere beneath the grief, another feeling began to stir, quiet, sharp, alive. Not anger, not yet. Something colder. A resolve. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Gavin Cho. His voice was crisp as always, tinged with concern. MRS, Ayes, it's good to hear from you. I got your message. You said there has been an issue with the property. I told him everything, the power of attorney, the transfer, the strangers living in my house. He didn't interrupt, but I could hear the scratch of his pen on paper, the soft exhale of disbelief. First, he said, when I finished, we'll verify the deed. If what you're saying is accurate, they've committed fraud. And if there is any indication of coercion or forgery, we can press criminal charges. I want you to investigate everything, I said. Not just the house. Their sterlings. Their finances. Whatever they've done before. Understood, he replied. But, MRS, Ayes, this might take time. I have time, I said quietly. And I have nothing left to lose. By the third day, Gavin called with his first findings, and they made my blood run cold. Your Doctorin Lave's parents, he said, were involved in a real estate scandal 5 years ago in Dallas. They ran a consulting firm that allegedly offered financial recovery programs for senior homeowners. In reality, they bought undervalued properties through shell companies, falsified documents, and resold them for millions. The case was dismissed when the main witnesses withdrew. How convenient, I muttered. It gets worse, he continued. I checked property records around your neighborhood. In the last 6 months, the Sterlings company has purchased 4 other homes on your street, all from elderly owners. My hand tightened around the phone. They're trying to buy the entire block. That's my guess. There is already a rezoning application filed with the city council to turn that area into a luxury development. If they get it approved, the land value will triple overnight. He felt the room tilt again, but this time from rage. And they're using my house as the cornerstone. Gavin hesitated. I am afraid so. But there is one more thing. The signature on your power of attorney, it matches yours perfectly, but I compared it with your hospital records. The date don't line up. You were under sedation that day. He went silent. They forged it, he said softly. And they knew exactly what they were doing. He hung up and sat for a long time, staring at the city skyline through the hotel window. Somewhere below, life moved on, people hurrying, lights flickering, taxis honking. I used to find comfort in the order of things, the predictability of schedules and systems. But now I understood how easily order could be stolen, one signature, one lie, one betrayal at a time. That night, I couldn't sleep. So I opened the security app on my phone. Before the trip, they had the new home monitoring cameras installed, a small indulgence, part of my habit of caution. The feed history was still accessible. He pressed play. And there she was, Mary, 3 weeks ago, standing in the living room with her parents. The video had no sound, but her gestures were unmistakable. She pointed toward the safe behind the bookshelf. Her father nodded. Her mother opened a folder thick with papers. Mary laughed, a laugh I had never seen on her face before, sharp and victorious. Another clip, from 2 days later, showed a man I didn't recognize carrying boxes labeled legal docs out of my study. And then, most damning of all, footage from the day I was discharged from the hospital. Mary on the phone, passing. Her expression was tense, her lips moving rapidly. The timestamp read 11:24 a.m., the same hour my taxi broke down on the highway because the driver had been called away for an emergency. It wasn't an accident, my mind whispered. None of it was. The next morning, I sent the videos to Gavin. He called back within minutes. This is enough to start a formal complaint. You contact the district attorney. But we need more proof of intent, especially if we want to pursue criminal charges for fraud. Then we'll get it, I said. Every piece. He spent the day writing notes, names, dates, connections, memories. It felt like building a map of betrayal, each line tracing how far they'd gone. My leg ached, but I ignored it. By evening, Gavin called again. His voice carried both excitement and unease. Mrs. Ice, we've just discovered something else. There is an insurance policy under your name, a life insurance plan worth $500,000. It was purchased 6 months ago. The beneficiary listed is Mary Thompson. For a second, the world went silent. Are you sure? I asked. Yes. The application contains your digital signature. But the IP address traces back to the Sterling's office in Dallas. My breath caught. My mind raced back to the accident, the way the car had swerved too suddenly, the driver who never stopped, the eerie feeling that it hadn't been random. Gavin, I said slowly. Find out everything about that accident. Every report, every camera, every witness. You want to know if it was really an accident. You get my investigator on it immediately. When the call ended, I looked at my reflection in the window, an aging woman with a cane and a scar running down her leg. Back behind the wrinkles and the weariness, I saw something else. Not fair. Not despair. Purpose. They had stolen my home, my peace, my trust, but they had made one mistake. They had forgotten who I was before I was a wife or a mother. He was an auditor. A woman who had spent 30 years tracing deceit through numbers that never lied. And I was coming for them. It's strange how quickly a week can turn into a battlefield. Every morning I woke before dawn, the pain in my leg humming like an old electric wire. The hotel room became my war room, papers spread across the bed, notes pinned to the wall with the precision of a general mapping an unseen enemy. There's Sterling's. Mary. My son. Every line, every date, every coincidence circled in red ink. Gavincho came by on Tuesday, his tie slightly loosened, his eyes shadowed by sleeplessness. He dropped a folder onto the bed. You need to see this. Inside were photocopies of transactions, property transfers, and something worse, a pattern. The Sterlings hadn't they just stolen my house. They'd been doing this to others, widows, retirees, people too trusting or too tired to fight. Each signature forged, each temporary transfer turned permanent once the victims were either hospitalized, relocated, or dead. There is a term for this, Gavin said quietly. Real estate elder fraud. It's one of the hardest crimes to prosecute because it hides behind family ties and legal jargon. But you're not like the others, MRS. You have records, evidence, and, he smiled faintly, a mind sharper than most of my associates. He almost laughed. You mean I'm stubborn? That too. He looked at me, serious now. He'd spoken with an agent from the FIS Financial Crimes Division. Her name is Agent Sophia Miller. She's willing to take a look. But if we go down this road, it won't be easy. The Sterlings are powerful, connections in real estate, politics, even banking. He met his gaze. Then we'll give them something they can't bury, the truth. The meeting with Agent Miller took place in a federal building on Franklin Avenue. The corridors smelled of paper and disinfectant, the kind of sterile air where truth and fear share the same temperature. Agent Miller was in her 40s, tall, calm, with eyes that had seen too many lies. She shook my hand with a grip that said she didn't underestimate old women. eBay reviewed the documents your attorney sent, she began. The pattern is consistent with a long-running scam. Forward power of attorney forms, fraudulent insurance claims, identity theft, and potential money laundering through shell corporations. The tricky part is proving intent. The Sterlings cover their tracks with real signatures, and family relationships make juries sympathetic. I have security footage, I said. And phone logs. And I am willing to testify. Miller nodded. We need more, a trail that shows the money moving from your accounts to theirs. If we can trace that, we can freeze their assets. He felt something ignite inside me, the old instinct from my auditing days, the thrill of chasing down inconsistencies. Then let me help, I said. I know how to read patterns they don't expect anyone to see. Miller exchanged a look with Gavin, then gave a small nod. All right, MRS. But if you're in this, you follow our lead. We protect you, but you don't contact them directly. He promised. He meant it. At least, for the first few days. By Friday, the investigation was quietly unfolding. The FBI subpoenaed bank records, traced shell companies, and cross-referenced property sales. Each day brought a new revelation, another elderly couple displaced, another transfer approved with a forged signature. The more we uncovered, the clearer it became my house wasn't just a crime scene, it was a blueprint. The Sterlings were building an empire on the bones of people like me. One night, as rain streaked down the hotel window, I opened my laptop and rewatched the footage from my security cameras. This time I noticed something I had missed, a small detail buried in the corner of the frame. A man delivering a thick envelope to Mary, shaking her hand before leaving. The timestamp the morning after my accident. I froze the frame, zoomed in the logo on the envelope, Titan Mutual Insurance. He sent it to Gavin with a message. Find this man. It replied within hours. Already on it. 3 days later, Gavin arrived at the hotel with a USB drive. The man's name is Dennis Crow, he said. Insurance broker. Licensed in 3 states. Guess who his biggest clients are? The Sterlings, I said flatly. Bingo. He handled their asset protection policies, basically, life insurance on every vulnerable person they helped. The beneficiaries were always listed as a family member or legal guardian. In your case, Mary. The pieces were aligning too neatly, too perfectly. It wasn't a chance. It was choreography. Can we prove it? I asked. Maybe. But we need a confession or recorded conversation linking her to the intent to defraud or harm you. He leaned back in my chair, the ache in my leg pulsing with every heartbeat. Then you get it. Isabella, Gavin started, but I raised a hand. I'm not reckless, Gavin. I'm precise. She thinks I'm powerless. That's her mistake. The next afternoon, I called Mary. My voice was calm, almost gentle. Mary, it's Mom. I need to pick up some personal papers from the house. Alice sold financial records. Could I stop by tomorrow? A pause. Then, carefully of course, Ma'am. Ella be home around 3. Perfect, I said. Thank you, sweetheart. When I hung up, I felt my pulse quicken. Gavin wasn't pleased, but he didn't stop me. He handed me a small recording device shaped like a brooch. Clip it on your jacket. And whatever happens, don't confront them directly. Keep her talking. He nodded. I understand. But I also knew that understanding and obedience weren't the same thing. The next day, I returned to the house. It was almost surreal, the way sunlight spilled across the same front yard where Alex and I had planted magnolias, the same porch where we carved our initials in the railing. The house looked identical, yet hollow, like a body breathing without a soul. Mary greeted me with a practiced smile. You look well, Ma'am. Hope's the leg. Healing, I said simply, stepping inside. The doctors say I'll be walking without the cane soon. She led me to the living room. Everything glamid, marble, gold, perfection, but it felt like a hotel lobby, not a home. Her parents weren't there, thank God. I lowered myself into Alice's old chair, the one piece of furniture that they moved. Maybe they dared. Mary, I began, my voice soft. Do you remember when Alex died, how you stayed up with me that night? You said I'd never be alone, that you'd protect this house like it was your own. Her hands trembled slightly before she caught herself. Of course I remember. You still feel that way. Do you? I asked. Because from where I stand, it looks like Jube done everything possible to erase us from it. Kid eyes hardened. Ma'am, please don't start this again. Jure tired. You don't understand how complicated things got. My parents. Your parents, I cut in, are thieves. And Jube helped them. For a heartbeat, silence hung between us like a blade. Then she smiled, slow and mocking. You should be careful, ma'am. Accusations like that could get you in trouble. Especially at your age. People might start thinking you're confused. The air turned electric. He felt my heartbeat echo in my ears. I'm not confused, I said. I'm remembering. And I remember signing a travel insurance form, not a deed transfer. Ju forged it. Her mask slipped for just a moment, enough for me to see the flicker of fear. Then she laughed. Do you have any proof? Yes, I said softly. And soon the whole world will too. She blinked, startled by my calm. What are you talking about? He stood, straightening my jacket, the recording device hidden beneath the lapel light as air. You will find out soon, Mary. I promise. As I turned toward the door, she said something that froze me mid-step. Alex always said you were too sentimental for your own good. Maybe that's why people take advantage of you. He turned back slowly. Be careful using his name, Mary. Jube already taken everything else. He left before she could reply. That night, Gavin and Agent Miller reviewed the recording. Mary hadn't they confessed outright, but her tone, her defensive remarks, they hinted at knowledge of guilt. Miller looked thoughtful. It's not enough for an arrest, she said, but it's enough for a wiretap warrant. We can monitor her calls. If she coordinates with her parents or the broker, we'll have what we need. Within days, the warrant was approved. The FBI set up surveillance on the Sterlings, property and phones. I watched from the sidelines, caught between fury and awe at how methodical justice had to be. Then, one night, everything changed. At 2:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. Gavin's number. Mrs. Ayes, he said, his voice tight. Webe intercepted something. Mary's father, Raymond Sterling, just arranged a meeting with a potential buyer, is planning to sell your house, under their company's name, to an overseas investor. Temaro. Casdeal. My chest tightened. Temaro. Yes. If they close that sale, the property becomes nearly impossible to reclaim. Didn't they hesitate? Then we stopped them. Miller's team moved fast. By Sunrise, federal agents were positioned across Maple Street, disguised as contractors and postal workers. A surveillance van idled at the corner. He sat inside, headphones on, heart pounding like a drum. At 9:47 a.m., a black SUV arrived at the house. Raymond stepped out, wearing a tailored suit, his wife trailing behind in pearls. They greeted two men, the buyers. The conversation was brief, business-like. Then Raymond opened a briefcase. Here we go, an agent murmured, watching the live feed. Mary joined them moments later, clutching a folder. She smiled, that same perfect, hollow smile. Transfer documents confirmed, she said on the recording. Once the funds clear, the property will officially belong to Westbrook Estates Holdings. Agent Miller gave the signal. Now. The front door burst open. Federal agents flooded in. Raymond froze, the briefcase slipping from his hand. Mary screamed. Claudia Sterling fainted. He watched from the van, my hands shaking. Justicia didn't sound like triumph. It sounded like silence breaking. 10 minutes later, Miller stepped out, her expression unreadable. She approached the van and opened the door. It's done. Webe arrested all three. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy, and insurance racketeering. The house is safe, for now. For now. Two words that meant both relief and warning. As the van pulled away, I looked out at the house, my house, now crawling with agents and flashing lights. I thought I'd feel joy, but instead I felt hollow, as if victory had come too late to save something that mattered. Gavin placed a hand on my shoulder. You did it, Isabella. No, I whispered. I just survived it. The real fight starts now. The trial was weeks away, but the headlines came fast. Elder fraud ring busted in Maple Street investigation. Woman is a family implicated in multi-million scam. Reporters called it the Hayes case. They loved the irony, the betrayed mother, the deceitful daughter-in-law, the quiet suburb hiding criminal empires. Back behind the headlines were nights of loneliness and doubt. My sanante called. Not once. I told myself he was in shock, torn between loyalty and shame. But some nights, when the silence felt too heavy, I feared he had chosen not to see me at all. Then, one morning, a letter arrived at the hotel. No return address. Just my name, written in Richard's handwriting. He opened it with trembling hands. Ma'am. I don't know what to say. eBay read the reports, eBay seen the evidence. I don't know who my wife is anymore. He thought she loved me. He thought she loved you. I'm coming home. Richard. He pressed the paper to my chest, tears slipping down my face. After all the betrayal, maybe there was still something worth saving. Maybe not the house. But the truth. And the bond between a mother and her son, the one thing even a house of mirrors couldn't completely distort. The courthouse smelled of old wood and fear. That's the first thing I remember from the morning the trial began. Outside, reporters pressed against the metal barriers, their cameras flashing like a swarm of impatient lightning. Words like betrayal, fraud, family tragedy echoed across the marble steps. Inside, it was colder. Quieter. The kind of silence that lives between heartbreak and justice. He sat near the front, Gavin beside me, his notes stacked in perfect order. My cane rested against the bench. The ache in my leg pulsed with the rhythm of my heart. I wasn't nervous. Not anymore. There are moments in life when pain burns itself into clarity. The door behind the defense table opened. Mary entered first, wearing a beige suit and a face scrubbed clean of emotion. Her blonde hair was neatly tied, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion or defiance. Behind her came her parents, Raymond and Claudia Sterling, both stiff, pale, and trembling. And then, for the first time in months, Richard walked in. My son. He looked thinner, older. The boy who once laughed at everything was gone. He has found mine across the courtroom, a flicker, a question, a wound. He sat at the far end, his lawyer whispering something he barely heard. He didn't look at Mary. Not once. Jorge Carver entered, his robe flowing like shadow. This court is now in session. And just like that, our private hell became public record. The prosecution opened with precision. Agent Miller took the stand, her testimony clinical, methodical, and undeniable. She laid out the pattern of fraud, the forged power of attorney, the illegal transfers, the insurance scam, the network of shell companies. Every word tightened the air around Mary like an invisible noose. Then came the part that made my stomach turn. Agent Miller, the prosecutor said, please tell the court what your investigation revealed regarding the automobile accident involving Mrs. Isabella Hayes. The room stilled. She adjusted her microphone. During our investigation, we discovered communications between the defendants and a contractor named Logan Pierce. Phone records and payment logs indicate that M.A.R. Pierce was hired to stage a traffic incident along Route 89 on June 11, the same day Mrs. Hayes suffered her leg injury. My breath caught. The prosecutor continued, "Are you saying the accident was intentional?" "Yes," Miller said firmly. "The purpose was to delay Mrs. Ayes' return home, giving the defendants additional time to finalize the fraudulent property transfer. Furthermore, we found an active life insurance policy purchased under Mrs. Ayes' name 6 months prior. The beneficiary was listed as the defendant, Mary Thompson." The words seemed to echo endlessly. Cair. State. Intentional. He felt the world tilt. The polished floor swayed beneath me like water. Gavin's hand steadied my arm, but I hardly noticed. Mary sat motionless, her face drained of color. Only her fingers betrayed her, twisting a napkin into small, frantic knots. The juez's voice broke the silence. "Mrs. Thompson, do you wish to respond to these allegations?" Her lawyer leaned in, whispering rapidly, but Mary shook her head. "No, Your Honor. Not at this time." Cobardice looks different up close. It doesn't scream. It hides behind silence. When it was my turn to testify, the courtroom lights felt blinding. My cane echoed softly as I walked to the witness stand. I raised my hand, swore to tell the truth, and sat down. The prosecutor smiled gently. "Mrs. Ayes, could you tell the court, in your own words, what happened when you returned from your trip?" So I told them. About the roses on the porch. About the cold eyes that greeted me. About the strangers in my home, the boxes in the garage, the son who didn't believe me. He spoke slowly, carefully, as if saying it too fast would break something fragile inside me. At one point, I glanced at Richard. It was staring at his hands. When I said, I trusted her as my own daughter, I saw his shoulders flinch. "And when you discovered the documents had been forged?" the prosecutor asked. "I realized my signature wasn't just stolen," I said. "My life was. My memories, my home, my peace, all taken by someone I once hugged goodnight." The room was silent except for the scratch of a reporter's pen. Then came the defense. Mary's lawyer rose, his tone dripping with courtesy. "Mrs. Ayes, you had some health issues recently, haven't you? Medication, surgery, hospitalization." "Yes," I said evenly. "I broke my leg. Not my memory." A ripple of laughter passed through the courtroom. Even the juez's mouth twitched. The lawyer pressed on, "Is it possible that, under medication, you misunderstood what you were signing?" He looked straight at Mary. "No. It's possible that under greed, she misused what I signed." Hesitated. Then quietly sat down. When I stepped down from the stand, I caught Richard's eyes again. For the first time, he didn't look away. The shame there was almost unbearable. At recess, he approached me in the hallway. His voice shook. "Ma'am." He turned slowly. "You knew she had the documents, didn't you?" I swallowed hard. I thought it was temporary. He thought, she said, it was for taxes, for convenience. He didn't know about the insurance, or the accident, I swear. He studied him, the boy he'd erased, the man who had drifted too far from home. "Do you believe me now?" He nodded. Tears glistened in his eyes. "I do. And I'm sorry. God, ma'am, I'm so sorry." He wanted to hug him. To pull him back into the years before lies built walls between us. But there was glass between us now, the kind of invisible glass made of guilt and time. He touched his hand instead. "Don't apologize," I said softly. "Just testify." He nodded again, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw my son, not the husband, not the businessman, but the boy who once ran through that same house laughing, barefoot, free. The next week, Richard took the stand. He spoke quietly, honestly. He admitted to signing the sale documents without reading them, trusting his wife completely. It described how she had controlled their finances, restricted his access, and reassured him that everything was for his mother's benefit. When the prosecutor asked, "Did you benefit financially from your mother's property?" he shook his head. "No, I didn't see a cent." He think the money went into her parents' accounts. "And when did you realize something was wrong?" "The day I read the newspaper," he said. "The day I saw my mother's name in the headline." A hush fell over the room. From the defense table, Medy's eyes burned with fury, not sorrow. Fury. Richard turned toward her. "I loved you," he said, his voice trembling. "And you turned that love into a weapon." The judge banged his gavel once. "Mr. Thompson, address your statements to the court." But the damage was done. Medy's composure cracked. She whispered something to her lawyer, then burst out, "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." The prosecutor's eyes sharpened. "Would you like to clarify what you mean by that, Mr. Thompson?" Her lawyer tried to stop her, but she continued, voice rising, desperate. "They were supposed to fake the accident, not hurt her. He just needed more time before she came home. He thought, if she stayed away, everything would be fine. He didn't know Logan would actually." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The judge's gavel slammed again and again. "Order. Order in the court." But the confession was already there, raw and undeniable. The trial ended 2 days later. Medy was convicted on multiple counts: fraud, forgery, conspiracy, and attempted insurance homicide. Her parents received similar sentences, Raymond 20 years, Claudia 15. The man who staged the accident pled guilty in exchange for testimony. When the verdict was read, I didn't cheer. He didn't even breathe. He just sat still, feeling something inside me loosen, not joy, not relief. Something quieter. Richard approached me outside the courthouse. The autumn wind tugged at his coat. "They're taking her away," he said, staring at the police car that carried Mary out of sight. "And I can't even hate her. Isn't that strange?" "No," I said softly. "It's human." He looked at me, eyes hollow. "What now, ma'am?" I took a deep breath, the air sharp and cold. "Now we rebuild. Not the house. Ourselves." He nodded slowly, as if trying to believe it. Weeks passed. Reporters moved on to newer scandals. The house was returned to my name, its marble floors stripped of their illusion of perfection. He walked through it one morning, sunlight slanting through the curtains. Dust danced in the air, gentle, aimless. Each room echoed with memory, laughter, argument, music, silence. In the kitchen, I found Alice's old coffee mug on the shelf. Faded words still legible: "Keep going. Ismail." I whispered. Later that day, Richard helped me move back in. He carried boxes, scrubbed floors, fixed the broken railing. In the evenings, we sat on the porch, silent but together. Sometimes silence heals better than words. One evening, as the sky burned gold, Richard said, "Do you ever regret it, Mom, trusting her?" He thought for a long moment. "No," I said finally. "If I regret trust, then they won. I'd rather live with heartbreak than suspicion." He nodded slowly, tears glinting in the corner of his eyes. That night, when he left, I stood by the window watching him go. The house was quiet again, not empty, not haunted, just quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like the beginning of something new. I poured myself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and opened my notebook, the one they kept through the entire ordeal. At the top of the page, I wrote, "They tried to take my home. Instead, they taught me what home really is." And beneath it, in small, steady letters, "Justice is not revenge. It's remembrance with courage." The light outside faded, and the first stars began to appear, Ismael, steady, endless. He closed my eyes and whispered into the stillness. Thank you, Alex. He kept going. Piso and they arrive with a sound. It slips in quietly, like sunlight through a window you forgot to close. Months passed after the trial. The house, once filled with echoes of betrayal, began to breathe again. He could hear it in the mornings, the soft clatter of dishes, the scrape of chairs, the creak of wood expanding in sunlight. Even silence had grown gentle. Richard had moved back to the city but came every weekend, fixing small things that didn't they need fixing. Just keeping busy, they say, as if guilt could be repaired with a hammer and nails. Didn't they stop him? The rhythm of his work, the sound of wood and forgiveness, filled the house with something that felt like life again. Sometimes we ate breakfast on the porch, the same porch where Mary had once stood pretending to cry. The magnolias had bloomed early that year. Their fragrance was heavy and sweet, the kind that lingers even after you close the door. Do you ever think about her? He asked one morning. Every day, I said. But not with anger anymore. I nodded slowly. I can't decide if I hate her or if I pity her. Hate is just another way of remembering, I said softly. Pity is a way of letting go. A looked at me, eyes wet with something he didn't name. How do you do it, Mom, after everything? I don't know, I said. Maybe because eBay lost too much already to keep losing more to bitterness. A smiled faintly, and for the first time since everything fell apart, he looked young again. The news moved on. The world forgot my name, replaced it with newer scandals, younger tragedies. That anonymity felt like mercy. But some stories refused to stay buried. A letter arrived one afternoon, written in a careful, unfamiliar hand. It was from a woman named Margaret Lee, 72, who had seen my story on television. She wrote, MRS, I watched you testify. I lost my house to a company like that 2 years ago. The police told me it was too complicated to pursue. But seeing you fight made me think maybe I'm not as helpless as I thought. He stared at the letter for a long time. Her handwriting trembled, but her words were steady. He felt something stir inside me, the same spark that had carried me through courtrooms and hospital corridors. That night, I called Gavin. I want to start something, I said. A foundation. Ismael at first. Just a place for people like her. Didn't they even hesitate? You mean victims of financial fraud? Victims of forgetting, I said. People who've been made to feel invisible. Smiled through the phone. Draft the papers. 3 months later, the Anthony Miller Foundation opened its doors in a repurposed corner of my house, a leasehold study, now filled with second-hand chairs, donated computers, and the smell of fresh paint. He named it after him, not because he was perfect, but because he believed in second chances. The first time a woman walked in, I nearly cried. She was in her 60s, thin as a whisper, clutching a folder of documents. They told me it was just a refinancing form, she said, her voice shaking. Now my name isn't there on my house anymore. I sat her down, poured her tea, and said, You're not alone. Those 3 words changed everything. More women came, teachers, nurses, widows. Some had lost homes, others savings, others simply trust. They came because they needed someone who understood the peculiar grief of being deceived by people they loved. Didn't they give them legal advice? Gavin handled that. I gave them time. A place to sit without shame. A space where silence could heal. Some afternoons, we didn't talk at all. We just sat in the kitchen, sunlight spilling across the table, tea cooling between us. I learned that healing isn't about forgetting pain, it's about teaching it to live quietly beside you. Richard volunteered on weekends. He repaired furniture, updated the computers, installed a ramp for wheelchairs. He never talked about Mary, but I could see the way her shadow followed him, quiet and heavy. One evening, as we closed up, I found him standing by the window, staring out at the magnolias. She wrote me a letter, he said without turning. Mary, I asked. Nadie. From prison. She says say sorry. She says she prays for me every day. He waited. What do you feel? I don't know, he said. Sometimes I think forgiveness is a luxury for stronger people. He placed a hand on his arm. Forgiveness isn't a strength. It's surrender, but the right kind. You stop fighting the memory. You just let it exist without power. He looked at me, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. Old Cide, the sky burned orange, the day folding into itself. By summer, the foundation had grown. Local papers called it a haven for the forgotten. He hated the word haven, but I understood why they use it. The world rarely makes room for old women. We have to build our own sanctuaries. He started hosting weekly gatherings, coffee mornings, reading sessions, even gardening workshops in the backyard. The laughter that returned to that space didn't erase the pain that came before it, but it rewrote its echo. Sometimes, after everyone left, he'd sit alone and look at the photo of Alex on the wall, the one where he's half laughing, half talking, caught mid-sentence. We did it, he'd whisper. We turned the ruins into a garden. One evening, Margaret Lee, the woman who had written me the first letter, stayed late. We sat by the window, the air filled with the hum of summer insects. Do you ever wish it hadn't happened, she asked. He thought about that for a long time. No, I said finally. Because without it, I'd still be sleeping with my eyes closed. She smiled, tears glinting. You make it sound like it's a blessing. Not a blessing, I said. Just a mirror that went lie. Autumn came again. The second since everything changed. On the anniversary of the verdict, Richard brought over dinner, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, too much wine. We ate on the porch, laughing more than I thought possible. I had started seeing someone, a quiet woman named Helen who worked at a bookstore. When he told me, his voice trembled slightly, as if love had become something fragile he didn't dare hold too tightly. I think Alex would have liked her, I said. I smiled. You think Alex likes anyone who reads poetry? He had good taste, I said. Later, after he left, I stayed on the porch, wrapped in a blanket. The magnolias had shed their last petals. The wind was cool, clean. Somewhere in the distance, a train passed, long, low, fading. He thought of Mary then. Of her hands trembling in court. Of the way she had once braided my hair while laughing in the kitchen. Sometimes I wondered if she had been born cruel or simply lost her way in the hunger for more. Maybe both. Maybe neither. People aren't monsters by nature, they're just mirrors cracked too many times. He didn't forgive her yet. But I no longer wished her harm. That, I decided, was enough for now. Winter brought quiet routines, morning walks with a cane, evenings by the fire, letters from women who had reclaimed their homes. Each story carried a piece of redemption I hadn't expected. One morning, Gavin stopped by with coffee and a grin. Guess what he said? Your foundation just won a community grant. Enough to hire 2 part-time advocates. He laughed, genuinely laughed. We're growing up. You deserve it, he said. You turned tragedy into something useful. Most people just let it swallow them. Maybe I was too stubborn to be swallowed, I said. He raised his cup. To stubbornness. To survival, I countered. We clinked paper cups like 2 conspirators who had outlived their fears. In January, I visited the nursing home where Mary's mother, Claudia, had been transferred after a stroke in prison. It wasn't a pity that brought me there. It was closure. She recognized me the moment I entered. Her lips trembled, her right hand twitching on the blanket. You sold and they have come, she whispered. Maybe not, I said. But I needed to see for myself that the story's truly over. Kira's filled with something like regret, or maybe just exhaustion. We thought we were helping our daughter, securing her future. By destroying others, I asked softly. She closed her eyes. I suppose that's how it always starts. We call greed love and hope the name fools God. He left her room without another word. Outside, snow was falling, slow, deliberate, soundless. For the first time in years, I felt light. By spring, the house no longer felt haunted. The garden bloomed again, stubborn as ever. Children from the neighborhood stopped by with their mothers, helping plant new flowers for the Foundation's charity event. Their laughter filled every corner, washing away what history had stained. I often found myself thinking of that day, the day I returned from my trip and found my home stolen. I used to replay it with bitterness. Now I replayed it with gratitude. Because that was the day my real life began, the day I stopped living safely and started living truthfully. People often asked if he'd ever sell the house. He always smiled and said, no. Not because I need it, but because it needs me. One evening, the sky turned the color of old rose petals. I sat by the window, tea in hand, watching the light fade. A young volunteer from the foundation, a girl barely 20, was organizing files at the desk. She looked up suddenly. MRS, she said shyly, Juve helped so many women. What made you start all this? Ismail. A lie. She blinked. A lie. Yes, I said. Someone once lied to me so convincingly that it broke my world apart. And when I finally stood up again, I decided to build something that could only exist on truth. She nodded slowly, as if trying to understand a language older than her years. After she left, I turned back to the window. The first stars appeared, Ismail, steady, unassuming. He thought of all the women whose stories crossed mine, all the invisible threads that had woven us into something unbreakable. Maybe that's what survival really is, not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose. Later that night, Richard called. Mom, he said, I wanted to tell you, Helen and I are getting married. Ismail. You sound terrified. I am, he admitted. But in a good way. Then you're ready, I said. Just remember, marriage isn't about perfection. It's about promise. Keep yours. I learned that from you, he said. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet, the phone warm in my palm. Somewhere, in the distance, a church bell rang. He closed my eyes and whispered to the dark. We made it, Alex. Is finally home. And for the first time in years, I believed it. It's been 5 years since the trial. 5 winters since the sound of gavels and grief faded into memory. I am 70 now. My hands shake when I write, but the ink still flows. Stubborn as I am, Richard and Helen visit every Sunday with their little girl, my granddaughter, Clara. Says 4, full of mischief, and insists the magnolia tree in the yard is hers. Sometimes I watch her play and think maybe this is what redemption looks like. Not the courtroom, not forgiveness, but a child laughing where pain once lived. The house no longer feels haunted. The walls, once scarred by betrayal, have become softer, like they, decided to forgive. Every morning, I open the curtains wide and let the light in. I used to fear sunlight after Alex died, as if brightness were an act of betrayal to grief. Now, it feels like conversation. I talk to him sometimes, aloud, as though he were still sitting in his favorite chair, a book in his hands, pretending to read while secretly watching me. I tell him about the women who visit the foundation, about the way hope keeps arriving in second-hand coats, holding folders of ruined dreams. He listens, I think. The magnolia outside always seems to move a little when I speak his name. I keep a small drawer of letters, not from friends or family, but from strangers. Women who once lost everything and found their way back. Some I write from tiny apartments, some from nursing homes, some from new houses they now own again. You don't know me, MRS, but you gave me courage when the police wouldn't they listen. Because of your foundation, I got my father's house back. You don't just rebuild homes, you rebuild dignity. You read those letters on lonely nights. They remind me that pain, when shared, becomes something gentler, not gone, just lighter. Sometimes I think about Mary. She's serving the remainder of her sentence in a woman's correctional facility upstate. Once a year, she sends a Christmas card, plan, un decorated, always with the same words. I'm sorry. I hope you're well. The first time it arrived, I tore it in half. The second year, I threw it away unopened. Last year, I read it. This year, I placed it in the drawer with the others. Not because I forgave her, but because hate felt too heavy to keep carrying into the next decade of my life. Maybe forgiveness isn't the door we walk through. Maybe it's a window we open just enough to let the air change. The Anthony Miller Foundation has grown beyond anything I imagined. We now have offices in 3 states, volunteer lawyers, counselors, even a hotline. They call me founder, though I prefer listener. Titles mean little when you've already lost everything once. Every Thursday, I host what we call quiet evenings. No speeches, no press, no fundraising. Just a circle of chairs, tea, and silence. Women come and sit, sometimes for hours, saying nothing. And then, someone breaks the silence, a word, a sob, a story. And suddenly, we're not strangers anymore. Grief has a way of turning strangers into family. One night, a woman asked, "Do you ever wish you could go back to before all of it?" Ismail. No. Because I wouldn't recognize peace if I hadn't met chaos first. She nodded, and the room fell silent again, the kind of silence that wouldn't be heard anymore. Richard and Helen live just a few miles away now. Their home smells like fresh bread and crayons. Clara's drawings cover every surface, crooked hearts, suns with too many rays, stick figures labeled grandma with hair far too perfect. Sometimes, Helen brings her to the foundation. Clara runs through the halls like it's her playground, handing out cookies to women twice my age. They adore her. Chill's laughter can disinfect even the deepest wounds. One afternoon, Clara sat on my lap, tracing the wrinkles on my hand. "Grandma," she asked, "what's a miracle?" I thought about it. "A miracle," I said, "is when something broken still works." She frowned. "Like you." I laughed until tears filled my eyes. "Exactly like me." There are moments, still, when the past comes back, sudden, uninvited. A perfume that smells like Mary's. A news headline about another fraud. The sound of a gavel on television. But no, instead of anger, I feel gratitude for having survived what could have ended me. For having found meaning in the rubble. Last spring, the mayor invited me to speak at a local event for women's empowerment. He almost said no, public speaking still made me nervous. But Gavin insisted. "You owe your story to the silence it might save," he said. So I went. He stood on that stage, lights hot on my face, looking out at hundreds of women, young, old, witty, hopeful. He took a breath and said, "They tried to take my home. But they didn't they know, home isn't they made of bricks. It's made of the people who still stand beside you when everything falls apart. It's made of forgiveness heavy enough to hold grief. And love stubborn enough to keep rebuilding." When I finished, there was a hush, and then, applause that felt like rain after a long drought. Afterward, a young reporter asked me what advice they give to women who've been betrayed. I thought for a long time and answered, Don't waste time trying to understand why people hurt you. Spend it becoming someone who can't be destroyed by it. She wrote it down. He went home. The magnolia tree outside my window is older now, its branches wide, its blossoms fewer but stronger. I like to think it mirrors me slower, but deeper rooted. Tonight, as I write this, the air smells like rain. The clock ticks softly, marking the end of another day I was never promised but still given. Richard called earlier. Clara lost her first tooth. She insisted on showing me through the camera, holding up the tiny white thing like treasure. Her joy was contagious. I laughed until my ribs hurt. Maybe that's how healing sounds, laughter loud enough to reach the past. On my desk sits a small wooden box. Inside are the few things I kept after everything: a lace wedding ring, a magnolia petal pressed in paper, a photo of Richard as a boy, and the house key I once thought I'd never need again. I keep it not because I'm afraid of losing the house, but because it reminds me of what I regained, myself. Tomorrow, we'll plant another tree in the garden behind the foundation, a magnolia for every woman who reclaimed her life. We'll carve names on small plaques: Margaret, Lydia, June, Amina, stories written in roots instead of ink. I won't live long enough to see them all bloom, but that's all right. Some things are meant to outlive us. Before bed, I always write one last line in my journal. Tonight, it's this. Peace isn't the absence of storms. It's learning to dance in the rain with your scars showing. And below it, I sign my name, not as a victim, not even as a survivor, but simply as a woman who kept walking home, even when there was no door left to open. I close the notebook, blow out the candle, and let the darkness settle gently. Outside, the magnolia sways in the wind, soft, forgiving, alive. And somewhere in that quiet, I hear Alice's voice, warm as memory. Keep going, Isa. Joe made it home. And for the first time, I believe him completely.